Okay, what's sacred to black people? Do we have a line that we will not let people cross? And the reason I ask that is that there was this controversy recently about some statements that Bill Maher made on his show on HBO about the Catholic Church, and about he drew a comparison between what was taking place out in Texas with the the compound where the 400 children were taken away, and they found that grown men were married to 15-year-olds or whatever it was. And by definition, those grown men were, I guess I can say this on cable, were having sex with those young girls. And they had all these babies. And the comparison that Maher drew was that, well, what about all the priests that were having sex with the young boys? And why do we celebrate aspects of the Catholic, I don't think he said church, but he may have said religion or whatever. He was talking about, the Pope coming to the United States. And he said, why do we celebrate that, but yet we go out and arrest and, take the children away from the people out in Texas. Now, both of those things, the priests assaulting the young boys and what took place in Texas, both of those things are despicable. But when he said that, you should have heard the outrage. I mean, people were calling into the stations and saying all kinds of things about this guy. There's even a movement now to get HBO to take him off the air. Boycott? Oh yeah. People are boycotting. They're saying we're going to boycott it. We're going to cancel our subscriptions to this station. And the outrage was just tremendous. I mean, people came out, how can he say that? How can he say that? The comparison he made, I thought was legitimate. He juxtaposed some things, and he's a political commentator. But the outrage that came behind his comments suggested very strongly to me that there's a line that you can't cross. I don't care what we've done among these priests, how many of them have assaulted young boys, and he suggested it was in the thousands, and he compared that to like the hundreds in Texas. But the people came out and said, oh no, you've gone too far. We're going to get you. And the way they're going to get him, or the way they're trying to get him, is through economic means. Boycotting, taking my subscription, not paying HBO any more money to watch it, take him off the air, that kind of thing. It's all economics, right? Where's our line? What do we do? How do we respond to things that we don't like? How do we respond to insults and mistreatment and discrimination when it comes to economics? Do we ever? What's our line? I spoke before council some time ago when they were discussing the tasering of 7-year-olds in Cincinnati. They actually discussed this, right, in city council. And I, along with others, went down to speak against it. And I said in my comments, and I was really talking to the people behind me, not the ones in front, because I knew it was going to pass. And I said, it's a sad commentary that black people would allow this line to be crossed. When we put our children on the table, when we put our children up for discussion to be electrocuted with 50,000 votes and have that made a law by the city in which we live, we have some big time problems. That suggests to me that we don't have any lines. We don't have any lines. There's nothing, if your children are not sacred to you, where you are willing to stand up and fight and say, no, you're not going there, then what is sacred to black people? And what do we do when that line is crossed? That's a very interesting thought, in my opinion, to watch what other folks do and then to look at what black people do or don't do. And that example of the tasering of children, of course the law was passed. We do have a law where 7-year-olds can be tased and 5-year-olds can be handcuffed and intimidated by police officers. And we just, oh well, Yeah, that's the law. And council voted for it. City council voted for that, passed it. And I just couldn't believe it. I'm sitting there watching it, looking around at black folks. Say, well, what are we going to do? How can this happen? But it does happen. So it brought to mind this question: what lines do black people have? What's sacred to black people? And if it's not our children, I don't know what is. And it gets back to this whole notion of having the right attitude about economic empowerment, protecting our children, and saying you can't cross this line. And if you do, here's what we're going to do. The folks who dislike what Bill Maher said, they're going to come at him economically. They're going to do something to him or do something to HBO economically. We just sit back and talk about how bad it is, what they did to me, and all of these things. White folks know how to use boycott. They know how to use a boycott. Black people, every now and then we'll throw up a boycott, it'll last for a while, and then even some black folks will come out and say, oh, that's wrong, we shouldn't do that. But white folks don't play. They don't play. When they call a boycott, it's a boycott. And I don't know if you know where the term even came from, but it came from a guy in Ireland named Charles Boycott, who was like a supervisor over some land and some housing, and he raised the rent. He wouldn't give the concessions in the rent that people needed, and they boycotted him. That's where the term came from. They said, well, we're not going to rent from him. His name was Boycott, Charles Boycott. That's where the term comes from. Comes from white folks, y'all, and they know how to do it. We used to know how to do it back in the 60s and 50s. But now I think, we've lost our zeal for that. But you look around and see what other groups are willing to do. Just think back during the beginning of the Iraq War, how folks were boycotting France. They were boycotting French wines, French cheese. They even boycotted French fries. They wanted to turn the name to something else. They called them something else. I mean, they cost the French economy over $300 million. Because they didn't like what they did. They had a line. France crossed it. You have to pay economically. So, we need to get this thing. And we need to get it when it comes to our children. We need to get it when it comes to what we consider to be sacred. And again, I'm not talking about religion. What we consider to be sacred among black folks. And we need to have a line. Can't be a gray area. It's got to be a line. And when somebody crosses that, we need to be able to respond. And I just hope for that day that we'll be able to do that the way other groups do it, and they don't apologize for it one iota. They don't make any concessions. They just do what they need to do, and I admire that. And I would hope that we would adopt that kind of thinking.